Stephanie Ramsey. I'm the head of compliance and risk here at Engaging Networks, and I've been with the company going on 2 years now. But I've been in the compliance space for 10 years now. And you already have seen Paul 3 times already, I think yesterday. Paul, you want to introduce yourself again?
So for people who weren't in my session yesterday, I'm Paul Hayward. I'm the Strategic Director of Business Development at Engaging Networks, and I work with charities typically outside of North America. So I come across lots and lots of questions about compliance as I go through and engage with people like you and your colleagues who are looking at the system and want to be reassured that we're fully compliant with the various different laws and legal frameworks we find across the world.
All right, so on to our fun topic here. Go ahead and pull this up. So our agenda for today, we're going to cover quite a bit, but hopefully it's not going to be too long. What we're going to talk about today is data privacy at Engaging Networks. It may not sound like an exciting topic, but really the idea here is to convey to you the important things that we're doing to protect your clients' data. So you're our clients, your supporters' data. What are we doing? So the second bullet here talks about how we ensure compliance with various industry standards and frameworks. And I'll go through these as we get into the presentation, but some of these may be familiar to you, one of them being GDPR, for example. I'll also talk about PCI DSS updates and reminders. And then Paul is going to talk about tools for your team and some seamless supporter engagement. So this next statement here, this is a statement that's on our actual website. This is our data privacy statement, and it's found, the principles in this statement are found in various places. For example, it's on our online privacy notice, it's in our data protection agreements that are online and also part of your contracts, and it's also in the contract. But the gist of this is the fact that as individuals, you want to know that your data is being kept secure, that it's private, it's handled properly, and you have the right to know that this data is handled carefully. So as this statement says, Engaging Networks takes great care to ensure that we protect your data. So how do we do this? As a global software development company, we are required to adhere to various industry standards and frameworks, as I mentioned, one of them being GDPR, one of them is the EU Data Privacy Framework, another one is the EU AI Act, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I already mentioned PCI DSS, and SOC 2 is something else that we'll look at here in a second. So we stay compliant by using something called Vanta. Vanta is a governance compliance, risk and compliance tool that basically provides ongoing, continuous compliance of our environment. I'm happy to say that by using this tool, we are able to maintain compliance like a much larger company. I mean, we're a small company. Our compliance team is very small, but by using these tools, we are able to adhere to the industry regulations. So this chart here is just showing you some of the things that Vanta does for us. In the left side on the column here, it talks about automated evidence collection, controls monitoring, policies. We push out policies and security awareness training for our employees, data privacy training, and then the all-important audits. So you should be happy to know that we are audited externally annually, and we provide a report, and that report is available to you all online. And many of you reach out to us every year to attest. You want us to tell you and provide evidence of what we've been doing. How secure are we? So you should be happy to know that we're doing things to ensure compliance. Some of the other things that are shown here on this screen, the fact that we do vendor security assessments. So every vendor that we deal with, before we onboard them, we actually look at their security and compliance to make sure that they are upholding security and compliance to the same level that we are. The other bullets here are showing some of the audits that we do annually. As I talked about, we do PCI and we do a SOC 2 audit every year. And then you also see some of the things, again, that we do internally to ensure that our employees are aware of what they should be doing and that they attest to that. They're getting the appropriate training. Okay, this slide shows some of the overlaps, the framework overlaps within the Vanta tool. So the tool comes with literally almost hundreds of frameworks that are out there in the industry, and the ones that you see with the red arrow show you the ones that we are assessing ourselves against. And you can see that there's overlap. But I'm listing also UK Cyber Essentials. That's something that's unique to the UK, and we've often had clients ask us that when they send us their security assessment to say, hey, are you guys adhering to the UK Cyber Essentials? And no, we are not. That's not in our roadmap, and we can't attest to everything. But from this, you can see the actual level of overlap. We're already 71% compliant with the UK Cyber Essentials simply by the other work that we're doing. So if we chose to go ahead and bring in an assessor and assess to that, it would be a very easy lift to get the other rest of the way. Okay? But here you can see some of the other frameworks that we're doing. And the one at the bottom, the EU AI Act, I'll talk about that in a little bit here in the next couple of slides. But we're pursuing that because of the work that we're doing with AI, the integrations that we're doing with AI segments in our environment. So we want you to rest assured that the things that we're doing are compliant with the laws, the new EU AI Act that came out, which is a law for anyone that's developing AI in the UK. So this should hopefully make you feel some sense of comfort and assurance for the work that we're doing to make sure that we are compliant and that we're keeping your data safe and your clients' data safe, your supporters. Okay, so this slide here is simply showing a little bit more detail about the requirements for each of these. And I'm not going to go into detail here. Oh, sorry about that. This slide is showing some of the requirements for these different frameworks. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but it just shows you, for example, GDPR, that's a self-attestation, but it is a law. And you can see some of the things that are required when we assess ourselves against that. Rights of data subjects, transfers of personal data to third countries, independent supervisory authorities. The EU AI Act, as I mentioned, that is a law. Self-attestation, or we can assess ourselves against ISO 42001. So ISO 42001 is a industry standard that you can certify against, but it's built within the EU AI Act. So again, part of that, as we go down this road of integrating AI in our environment, we have to look at risk management, transparency, and explainability of what we're doing to integrate AI in our environment, ethical considerations, legal obligations, etc. Okay, and then, as I mentioned, ISO 42001 is a voluntary requirement, but it's a certification. And all of this aligns. As you can see, it also requires risk management, et cetera. Okay, SOC 2 and PCI. Okay, so SOC 2 is something that's US-based. This is a requirement, or I'm sorry, a framework that's popular in the United States, and it covers security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, security, and privacy. And an assessor comes in and audits us against this. So some of our larger clients in the U.S. ask for this report annually to make sure that we are doing all the things that we need to do. And you can see the different categories that it looks at. I won't go into detail. But again, that particular assessment is cross-industry in the U.S. So it covers the healthcare sector, banking, fundraising. So it's a very popular assessment, and some of our EU clients actually are interested and happy to see that we have a SOC 2 report as well. PCI. How many of our fundraising clients are in the room? Let me see a show of hands. How many of you are using our fundraising? Yeah, I see some of you. Okay. First of all, I want to give you all and applaud and let you know that we owe you a hug. PCI is something that's hard. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry and Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. So over this past year, there have been some changes in the industry that have been hard. Requirements are getting more and more strict around payment card processing and accepting funds for donations online. And as you can see, the requirements, they're listed there on the side. I'm not going to go through that. The key is, again, we are assessed annually. It's a very rigorous assessment, and we get a report from that, and that report is available to our clients. The next one is the data privacy framework. So this is something that's specific to the EU. This is something where the European Commission has declared data equivalency for U.S. companies that want to attest to the DPF, the Data Privacy Framework. So it is a self-attestation, and the different bullet points there talk about what it provides. So it's basically providing adequate protection for personal data. It allows U.S. organizations to safely transfer EU data to the United States if they adhere to and follow this data privacy framework. It is a successor to the EU-US Privacy Shield, if any of this is familiar to you. Okay? And then the rest of this just talks about the different entities that have oversight of this. But again, just showing you all the efforts that we're doing to make sure that we are keeping your data safe and secure, and that we are doing the rigor in the background to keep what we do compliant. So next, PCI. We're going to go into this a little bit more for our fundraising clients, but just talk a little bit about some of the updates that are happening right now as of April 1st. So again, this is relevant to any of you who are using fundraising or peer-to-peer on our platform, or any platform in general, but hopefully on our platform. So these two new controls, 6.4.3, have to do with script management, and the other one has to do with change and tamper detection on your for your scripts that run on your web pages. And the key here is that for the script management, this is now addressed via the ASV scanning that's done. And one of the questions in the quiz yesterday asked about who is, for example, we have a preferred vendor for ASV scanning, and someone correctly mentioned that yesterday. Does anyone know the answer to that? Who is Engaging Network's preferred vendor for ASV scanning? Does anyone know the answer? Say it again. Thank you, Control Case. Okay, so we do have some knowledgeable people here who are feeling the pain of what's going on with PCI compliance. So just a little bit more about these new controls. Thank you. A little bit more about these new controls. So as I mentioned, don't worry, this is being addressed via the scanning that's being done. So the requirement is that you do quarterly scanning of the web pages, and part of this new requirement is when Control Case scans your web pages, they're also going to come up with a list of any externally referenced scripts that they find running on your web pages. They will provide that list to you, and you have to attest to the fact that, number one, you understand the functionality of those scripts, okay? And then number two, you're giving explicit authorization that says, yes, I know what these scripts are, I know what they do, and yes, we approve this, okay? You might ask yourself, why is this important? The industry is seeing more and more malware and bad actors who are trying to infiltrate web pages and do nefarious things to steal money. So they're asking us to be more diligent in what we're doing, and that requires us to take a deeper dive into what you're running on your pages, okay? The next section there talks about, again, I just mentioned this, Control Case is going to provide you with that inventory of scripts, and there will be a special notes section in your ASV scan report that will allow you to attest to that. So it's really not hard. It's just an extra step that you have to do starting this quarter and every quarter going forward. There's a note at the bottom that talks about Control 11.6.1. That one can be addressed with content security policy. And that's something that we announced a few months ago as well. This is something that's in our security center, and we'll be looking at here a little shortly. Okay, so this is just an example of a client attestation, if you can read this, but it's basically, this is a snippet of some scripts that are running on a client's web page, and you can see the blue is showing the actual URL of the script that's running. A lot of this is JavaScript, for example, and then underneath that is showing a little bit of definition of what that script is. So, for example, one of them says this is used for Google Analytics, or this is used to integrate corporate donation matching via Double the Donation. Okay, so in this case, the client has gone through and said, yes, I know what this script is. This is, and they're enumerating what that script does. And then there's a statement at the top that says, we confirm the following external JavaScripts are intentionally there. And then there also at the bottom, it says, we attest that we are aware of these scripts and their intended functions. So very simple. Okay, some of you may have a few scripts. Some of you may have more, but again, you'll work with Control Case to attest to this. Okay, so that's basically it for what I want to cover in terms of compliance and what we're doing to make sure that we are meeting industry requirements and keeping data secure. Now I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to talk about more of the tools for your team. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Tiffany. And so far we've talked about the things that are going on behind the scenes to keep your supporters' data safe, to keep your donors' card information and things like that safe. And I hope you can see there's a huge amount of work going into this, and certainly achieving SOC 2 compliance and PCI Level 1 compliance were major developments at Engaging Networks that took a lot of the security that we could offer our clients to kind of the next level. So that you and your supporters know that they're safe and that the data they give you is safe in your hands and in ours. But there are tools that we provide within the platform that you can use to help secure your account, to help make your account more difficult for any nefarious actor to access and to do things with. And there's also tools that allow you to demonstrate compliance when you need to demonstrate compliance to various bodies who might approach you or might ask you to provide them with information, something like an audit. So the first thing to mention is the Trust Center. I don't know how many of you have accessed our Trust Center. This was a tool that launched probably about 12 months ago, and it provides you and people who've signed NDAs with us with information about the things that we do internally so that you can assess our platform. And that might be useful for governance teams, DPOs. It might be useful for any audit you're doing of the systems that you're using. But it may also be good just to refresh people like your senior leadership team's knowledge that the tools they're using are compliant and secure. So it's certainly worth accessing it, and it's worth regularly checking it for things like scan results. Those of you who have looked in the account section of Engaging Networks over the last few months may have also seen a new tool that's accessible to your team, and that's our Security Center. And this has been developed because of the scanning that we're asking our fundraising clients to do. But it's an extremely useful resource to just help you manage your account and understand how secure your pages are. So you can see there we have an easy way to access our Trust Center available. You also have access to things like the scan results, so you can see where you have kind of critical issues on pages that need to be fixed or pages that need to be shut down. As scanning fundraising pages will always cost a small amount of money. You can also assess low volume pages, so pages that you may have launched and you've had no donor hit them in several months. You probably want to shut those pages down so that they don't need to be scanned anymore. And that obviously helps you control costs on the back end. You can review a list of vulnerabilities and also download resources that are provided through scanning. So it's an incredibly useful tool for you. And then you can also just review the number of users who have access to your account. And certainly when I was an Engaging Networks client, one of the things that we frequently forgot to do was to delete users that left an organization. And so it just keeps that front of mind and keeps reminding you that you need to do little bits of admin on the account to keep the account safe and secure. We also, so supporters are obviously giving you information, they're making transactions. And what happened to me a couple of times during my career is that I've been audited by various regulatory bodies in the UK. The first audit I ever did was a gift aid audit. And the question you're normally asked is, here's a list of supporters that we found on your CRM. We want to see the gift aid statements they signed. And when I was first audited back in about 2012, this involved sending a member of the team to a warehouse to rifle through paper records kept in boxes because people want to see evidence of the original statement somebody ticked. Engaging Networks is a little bit more advanced than that. You have a statement, whether you store it as an opt-in or as a question, on every supporter record, so you can go in, find the supporter, and you can immediately show a regulator what they've signed up to, and you can do the same with opt-ins. So if you're ever audited by the ICO, they might do a similar exercise and ask you to provide the opt-in statement that somebody gave you. And you can do that in the tool as well under the transactions tab in a supporter record. So they're really, really useful features to just allow you to easily respond to requests from regulators. Another part of the platform that's probably not commonly used is user access control. And this is a really, really powerful part of the platform because it allows you to lock things down to certain users and certain teams. Many people who might be administering an account will have seen this screen, which allows you to create a new user. And this will allow you to obviously put the user's information in, to select whether that person is a user, an admin, or a super admin. And that's kind of the most basic kind of level of user access control that we offer. Don't make all of your users super admins because it gives them full access to everything on the account. But I think the more interesting part of this screen, if you're looking to be more secure and safe, is the group drop-down, because we also offer tools that allow you to create things that we call permission groups. And this is a really, really powerful way of controlling that kind of access in your account. This is the kind of basic permission group overlay that you'd see. And you can go in and say you're setting up users, you've got somebody who's a campaigner. You may not want them to be able to do things with the data that's in the back end of the system. You might want to limit what they can download, what they can change and modify. Conversely, the database team, you probably don't want them being able to send emails to your supporters or edit your pages. So in each of these sections, you get these really long drop downs that allow you to essentially customize what users can do in your account. And that helps you lock the account down and helps you manage access to people who should have that access. And that is a really powerful kind of area of the tool that is a really, really good way of kind of trying to ensure that compliance. The other thing that we offer is two-factor authentication. Now, we know that the data center that covers the UK and EU, only 27% of our users in that data center use two-factor authentication, but it's one of the most powerful ways of keeping an account secure. So if you haven't enabled two-factor authentication on your account for your various users, I'd really encourage going and doing that. I have to use two-factor authentication or passkeys when I log into virtually anything these days. And so it's a really, really powerful way of just securing the information that you're storing in your account. And then for our fundraising clients, mainly, a feature that is useful at points is capture, and that allows you to do some just form security work. So what we often see, or what I've seen before, are large volumes of very small donations come through from people who are committing credit card fraud, and they're putting large volumes of cards through donation forms at very low amounts to essentially find out what cards are active, what numbers they can use, and then go away and make larger purchases. A capture helps stop that from happening. And you can also, within your account settings, set up things like minimum donation values on your donation forms. And so where I've had this happen in the past, we've set kind of a £2-3 minimum donation limit just to try to protect people from that kind of fraud and stop the charity's accounts being used to kind of enable somebody to commit credit card fraud. Talking of fraud protection, we also work with a company called Cloudflare, and I won't go through the full list here, but they offer a number of fraud protection capabilities within your Engaging Networks account. So it helps, again, protect your donors from fraud and protect others from fraud using the pages that you've created on our tool. So finally, just to talk about the things you can do to give your supporters a really seamless experience. Obviously, you can go and you can create opt-ins, and this will help you collect data in a compliant way. And it gives you that record, that auditable record of the statements people are signing when they're opting in. We also support the soft opt-in, as I talked about yesterday, and you can set up your data structures in a number of ways to help your charity use the soft opt-in to increase the number of leads you're generating or to communicate with people in different ways that your organisation might strategically choose to use that data. We also have some advanced opt-in features that won't be applicable to everybody. But if you're working in Germany, for example, we have out-of-the-box support for the double opt-in. I wouldn't encourage any charity not working in Germany to use that because it does dramatically reduce the number of people opting into your communications. But if you do have supporters in Germany, you can enable that in the German locale and be completely compliant with the German interpretation of the GDPR. As I talked about yesterday in the workshop session I did, we can also provide things like one-click opt-in. I can talk to you more about how that's possible, but we have a partner from Actually Data who has helped enable that for our clients as well in the past. And that's a really, really good way of increasing things like opt-in rates and getting all of that data compliant and in the system in the proper way. And then finally, you can obviously blanket unsubscribe donors, so you can remain compliant there with the various requirements of the GDPR. And you can also launch things like subscription management pages, so you can take more granular consent from people who might be opting in and out. So all of that will allow you to create these rich, auditable records of fully compliant data that you're storing in the right way, you're using in the right way, and is auditable whenever you're asked for proof that you're managing data correctly. Finally, and I know that we've run out of time, but just to mention an unloved part of our platform, which is actually incredibly powerful, which is our hub tool. This gives your supporters an area where they can go in and manage the data that you're storing on their behalf. They can change things like opt-in. They can remove data that they don't want you to retain. So that's a really powerful tool to help you keep your supporters compliant. But then if you are using something like our fundraising tools, you can go in there and ask people to upgrade a gift. To give people the ability to pause a donation if they're having a particularly difficult month. And you can get people to go and reactivate a previous donation without having to go through, a completely large formal kind of donation process, which can often be a block to things like direct debit giving. So it's a really powerful area of the platform, both for compliance, but also for things like fundraising. So just to finish, thanks very much for listening to us. We'd welcome any questions you've got either now or over the break. Cheers.
We do have a few questions coming in. I think we have 2 or 3. The first one is, with the upcoming data use and access bill, is there anything that affects Engaging Networks in this bill? I think that's probably one for Tiffany, maybe.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, we're continuing to evaluate that. That's one that we haven't integrated into Vanta yet. It's not yet there, but we're continuing to look at everything that's coming down the pipeline and trying to keep ourselves abreast of that. So all I can say is we're looking at it. And we're continuing to stay secure. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I was just going to say that obviously we said yesterday we support the soft opt-in out of the box. So you'll be able to, if your charity choose to use soft opt-in, that's an easy thing to launch on the platform. Also, I think yesterday morning the Lord sent it back to the Commons to be amended slightly. So I think that it's still a bit of a movable feast at the moment.
Do you have any plans or currently have a UK European data center rather than Canada US? So I think it's probably around the...
So we do have 2 data centers right now. So we're hosted in AWS. So one is in the US and one is in Canada. So right now, EU data is not actually hosted in the US. It's hosted in the Canadian data center. But we don't have any plans to do a UK data center at this point.
But obviously there's the frameworks around that for data transfer. So.
Right. There is the frameworks around that for data transfer. That just means that we are allowed to do it, but we have not pulled EU data over. The framework allows us to do that for cases, for example, if we needed to restore some data or pull data over, and now we're covered for that. But we're not hosting EU data in the US. So I'm glad that question was asked so we can clear that up.
Okay. And in the future, will EN work directly with Control Case or submit information for ASV scans on behalf of clients like other fundraising software vendors do? So maybe you can give a bit of clarity around that.
All right, so I think the question is in the future, are we going to continue to work with Control Case or are we going to do the scans ourselves? Is that what it's asking?
So will we work directly with Control Case and submit information for ASV scans on behalf of clients?
That's a possibility. I mean, it's something that we may pursue. So I know that those of you who have signed up with Control Case, you probably did a 1-year contract. So at the end of this year, we'll look at where we are and see if it makes sense for us to do that or if it's still best to have clients manage and own that yourselves. What we've seen is that incents good behavior, some of that housekeeping that needs to be done. For example, throughout this whole effort, earlier in the year, we started off by telling clients, hey, we're internally running vulnerability scans to help you find out what's running on your system. Now, that's different than an external scan, but part of that was also encouraging you to start to close low-volume pages. So that's part of that housekeeping that could be done. And then also, as clients started to look at having to have an external assessor like Control Case come in and scan their pages, they started to shrink those pages as well. So that incents good housekeeping, good behaviors when you all are involved in looking at, hey, maybe I don't need all of this. Maybe, we need to go back and look at what we're doing. So, but again, that's a good question. We will evaluate that at the end of this year and see if it makes sense, if it's feasible for us to do, or if we'll continue with how we're doing this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tiffany. And I know we're a little bit short time because we're going to have a break in a moment, but there are a couple of interesting questions that have come in that are probably better directed at our product team. But I just wanted to bring them up here about people not necessarily wanting just to use Google Authenticator. So extending that two-factor authentication to Microsoft or other authenticator apps.
You can use other apps to authenticate.
Okay.
So I use 1Password, and I had this level of confusion initially when I was asked to do two-factor authentication a lot, and I ended up with a ton of different apps on my phone. And I found that most of them, the codes can be used across different devices or across different apps. So I use 1Password for my two-factor authentication.
Okay, that's a hidden gem there. Thank you, Tiffany, for all the work that you do and keeping us all safe and keeping all the support data safe as well. So thank you to Paul and Tiffany.